since I was a 5-year-old boy, and I watched Neil and Buzz step onto the surface of the moon. And that's one of the things you guys will find, that you have passions. And having passion is a gift. I think we all have passions, and you don't get to choose them, they pick you. But you have to be alert to them. You have to be looking for them.
"3 miles below where I'm standing right now is a wonderland that is testament to the Apollo program. It's one thing to see those Zeppelin engines, read about those Zeppelin engines, but to bring those pieces up on deck and actually touch them, that brought back for me all those feelings I had when I was 5 years old and watched those missions go to the moon. This results in one young explorer, one young adventurer, one young inventor doing something amazing that helps the world. I'm totally fulfilled. Maybe they'll build the next F1.
We really, over the next few hundred years, face an unavoidable choice, which is either we stay here on Earth and have a civilization of stasis, or we expand into the solar system and have a dynamic, exciting civilization of exploration and pioneering. So we need to do this. And it's a grand adventure. It's going to be amazing. And so what stands in our way? We need our space vehicles to be reusable. And we can't just have reusability, it has to be real, operational reusability. I wish that there could be a bunch of very entrepreneurial startup companies doing amazing things in space. The idea of going to the moon was so impossible that people actually used it as a metaphor for impossibility. And then, in the 1960s, we humans did it. What I would hope you would take away from that is that anything you set your mind to, you can do. Von Braun said after the lunar landing, "I've learned to use the word impossible with great caution." And I hope you guys take that attitude about your lives.
I am so excited because Jeff came prepared with cowboy boots. So, 2 cowboys on stage. Cowboy to cowboy. This is the Space Cowboy Ball. All right. I'm so excited today because the last time I saw you was 7 months ago in LA at the ISTC convention. The team with The Expanse had been there, and for those of you who don't know, very briefly in a nutshell, The Expanse had just finished a really successful 3rd season and did not get picked up by Sci-Fi, much to the surprise of everyone on the planet, and we were in tears. We were doing one last convention panel, and as luck would have it, Jeff was there to receive an award, very much like tonight. And I'm not gonna lie, I planned our panel time so that I'd bump into you. And we met on the floor, and he was so gracious. I was kind of nervous. Yeah, he was surrounded by his people, and I kind of had to get seen. And I was looking forward to introducing myself, and he turned around, he looked at me and went, "Oh, you! You're a great actor!" That was like the most humbling experience I've ever had. I didn't even know he had watched the show. I knew you were a fan of the books. And then, a few minutes later, we were all invited to come and visit him at the dinner table, right in a room like this. And he met the entire cast, and some of the showrunners and the writers. And he was very upfront with us. And I'm telling the story for a reason, by the way, because it relates to tonight. He said, you know, we're really sorry about what's happened to the show. Amazon, you know, we're trying to make things happen. There's so much complications, and nothing's been worked out yet, and fingers crossed. And we were really grateful. And I don't know if you got those pictures. We took some pictures of us celebrating. Is that us Is that us fist pumping? Yeah. So that's before the pickup. That's just us being so happy to see you and you being such a cool guy. And then we sat down, we had dinner, and so that was the second time I met you that night. And I was thinking, I looked at you and I was like, there's something about you, and I don't know what it was. I said, I think this guy's a nerd. And I said, what can I do to acknowledge that? Because all we were doing was talking business. So I went through my swag bag and I found an Expanse comic, which is like the origin stories of the characters. And I got everyone on the table to sign it. And at one point, all the crowds cleared away from you, and I went up and I gave it to you. And I said, here's our Expanse comic. And I think you're a bit of a nerd, so you might enjoy that. And then I kind of felt embarrassed because I think I made a fool of myself. And I go to leave, and I feel this arm grab my arm, and I go, oh crap, his security's got me. And I turn around. And it was Jeff, and he grabbed my arm. And I don't know if you remember this. You looked into my soul, and you said, and this is what he said, there has to be some significance to us all being here together, with what's happening with the show, with what's going on, with me being here, and Amazon, and all of this. There is significance. And the hair stood up on my back, and on my arms, and I went, and I scampered back to the table, and I started eating. And I looked back at Jeff, and they're like, what happened? I said, no, he scared me. And I looked back at Jeff, and Jeff, we were eating, and he takes out his cell phone. And he starts hopping away on his cell phone, and I'm looking, and he was so focused. I've never seen, and everyone, I'm like, what's going on? They're like, what's he doing? For 15 minutes, he was pa, 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 pa. And after about 15 minutes, and there's a point to my story, he puts his cell phone away, and he leans back, and he's got a big smile on his face. And then they say, Jeff Bezos, come up for your award. And Jeff gets up, and he goes, before I sit down and talk, I just want to say, has anyone here heard of The Expanse? And you probably have seen this video online, those of you who are fans of the show. And everyone cheers because they just watched us do a thing. He goes, the cast is here, and we took out a step. He goes, I wanted to say, we were talking an hour ago about the show, and it hasn't been saved, and 10 minutes ago, I just got word that The Expanse has been saved. And most importantly to me, the Rossi is safe.
You're getting a high fidelity story here, and we had been working. Amazon had been working for weeks to save The Expanse, and but it was close, but it's never done until it's really done. And so, like, when I was emailing Jen Salke, who's the head of Amazon Studios, and I was like, where are we on it? Or is it done, or is it just kind of done? Like, where is it in the doneness spectrum? And she said, believe it or not, like, it got totally done 10 minutes ago. And I'm like, well, can I tell everybody, like, right now? And she's like, sure, go ahead. And so I did.
The point I'm trying
basically was happening while we were talking.
The point I'm trying to make is, this man comes into an environment, improvises, checks out what's going on, feels the pulse of what's going on, sees 2,000 scientists in a room, sees the cast of a show that he loves that's been struggling, knows his company's working on it, sees there's press in the room, evaluates the situation, and instantaneously, like a snap of his fingers, like Thanos from the Infinity Wars. That's my little geek cred there, guys. Just so you know. Snaps his fingers, and 400 people get their jobs back, and one of the best science fiction shows on TV comes back on the air. And just to show, like, when you want something done, you get it done. And that goes to talk about everything that we're about to talk about now. So on that little segue, that was just a shameless plug, but
it's a great show. Probably everybody here is watching already, but if you're not, you should. And season 4, we're filming season 4 right now, and
yeah,
come out sometime in 2019.
I'll give you the notes from the 4th episode that you were asking about. So, but yeah, we're shooting up in Toronto, and we're on episode 4 already. It's looking great. It's going to be a different one than you've ever seen before, so we're excited. But I would like to know now, from this mind of this man, what where did your inspiration come from to pursue space endeavors?
Well, a couple things. One, we've talked a little bit about tonight, which is science fiction. The very first thing, though, was watching Neil and Buzz step on the surface of the moon in 1969. I was 5 years old. I watched that. It was incredible. Even at 5, I could sense the excitement of all the people in the room. And you know, you don't choose your passions choose you. And that's a mysterious process. None of us knows exactly how we develop passions for anything. But once you do have a passion for something, you focus on it, you keep learning more about it, you get deeper and deeper into it, and it becomes a deeper and deeper passion. It's a virtuous cycle. And then I had the great good fortune of spending all my summers on my grandfather's ranch in South Texas, halfway between San Antonio and Laredo, in a little town called Cotulla. And Cotulla had a small town library. Some resident of Cotulla had donated his entire science fiction collection to the library, which was like 300 books. And so through my teen years, during the summers, I read my way through that, and that was, you know, all the classics, the Heinleins and the Asimovs, and et cetera, Larry Niven, and it was so much, and I loved it. And I do believe, as per the conversation earlier, that the dreamers come first. The dreamers dream, the storytellers tell their stories, and then the builders come. And they're inspired by those stories, and they build those things. And it can take a long time in some cases. You get Jules Verne, and you have to wait 100 years. It can take longer than that, but it does happen. And so that's why dreamers and storytellers and imaginative, creative people who do things like The Expanse and The First that we saw tonight, those things are so powerful because they infect young people with a passion that then they go on and they build the real thing.
So you could have done anything with Blue Origin. You could have started anywhere, and you had the resources to do what you want. Why did Blue start with human spaceflight and tourism instead of going straight to orbital and HARP or kind of science? Why start?
Well, the history of Blue Origin is kind of interesting. So it started in the year 2000, and it actually started because I had one of my friends is the famous author Neil Stephenson, and I had a long friendship with him already at that point, a couple of years anyway. And we went and saw October Sky together, and I snuck peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the theater, which he loved because his son is allergic to peanuts, and they can't have peanuts in the house. And we had a lot of flew model rockets together, and we both have a passion for space. And I was telling him that one day I'm going to start a space company. And Neil had said to me, well, what are you waiting for? Why not today? And I went home and I thought about that, and I thought he was right. So I started it, and I hired a few brilliant physicists as a first step, and I was convinced that we could come up with a better solution for getting off Earth than chemical rockets. That we just had to apply some creativity and imagination to it. And we went through every possible thing that had been talked about and invented, and we even invented a few new ideas, and we evaluated those. And ultimately, after 3 years of this, so 2000 to 2003, I came to the conclusion that chemical rockets were actually the best solution for getting off Earth. And there was only one small problem, is that they're expendable. They need to be reusable. And as soon as you look at it, so New Glenn, which is our large orbital vehicle, it's 3.85 million pounds of thrust. It carries a few million pounds of propellants. The entire cost of the liquid oxygen and liquefied natural gas that you put, 3 million pounds of that on board, the cost of that is less than $1 million. So this very large vehicle, fueling it costs less than $1 million. So why is launch so expensive? Launch is so expensive primarily because you use the harbor once and throw it away. And so that's really, it becomes very obvious once you have looked at the alternatives and you've looked at the real cost of an operable, reusable vehicle, that that's the way to go. We know how to do it. It doesn't require anything fancy. It requires a lot of very difficult engineering. You need to be able to reuse it. And so we started with tourism, and we started with suborbital for two reasons. One, the practice effect. We humans get better at everything we practice. If you ever have some kind of surgery, there's a lot of data. Make sure your surgeon does that surgery at least 5 times a week, because they're going to be way better at it than somebody who does it 1 time a week or 1 time a month. And we just get better at the things we do frequently. And when you have an orbital launch vehicle, even the most successful orbital launch vehicles in the world, historically launched maybe 10 to 20 times a year. It's not a lot of practice. Once or twice a month is considered a gigantic success for an orbital launch vehicle. And so what we really need to do is fly, weekly and then finally daily. And suborbital tourism can support that mission. Never forget that tourism and entertainment are often drivers of new technologies. And aviation was true with barnstorming. It was one of the first practical things that people could do to make money with an airplane. More recently, you see in machine learning, the graphics processing units, GPUs, are a critical part of machine learning systems today. And those were invented for gaming, not for machine learning. And so, again, entertainment often drives technology forward. And tourism in space, I believe, is going to be like that. It's going to drive space forward because it's a mission that you can fly frequently. One of the problems with driving a lot of volume with satellite launches, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's just hard to drive a lot of volume. The satellites are way more expensive than the launches. And so, the launch may be $60 to $80 million, and the satellite may be $300 million and up. If it's a national security payload, it probably starts with $1 billion. So there just aren't that many payloads that you can launch with a $60 to $80 million launch vehicle. So anyway, you need practice. And then the second thing is, we always knew we were going to build a big orbital vehicle. And that's what New Glenn is, and in fact, one day we'll build New Armstrong. So New Shepard is named after Alan Shepard, New Glenn is named after John Glenn, New Armstrong, obvious. So what we wanted to do was build a vehicle where we could learn, and then we would be ready to build a second vehicle and take all of the lessons and learnings and failures and setbacks and incorporate all of that knowledge into New Glenn. And that's what New Shepard has afforded us to do. New Shepard is liquid hydrogen, liquid oxygen. The engine that powers New Shepard is going to be the upper stage engine for New Glenn. And so we get to practice with that engine. New Shepard hopefully will start flying humans into space this coming year, hopefully in the first part of this coming year. Super exciting. And we had to choose a reusability architecture, which means you need to land the booster. And there are a bunch of ways you can do that, and a lot of them have been studied, and they all work. The thing I liked about vertical landing is that it is incredibly scalable. In fact, the bigger the vehicle gets, the easier vertical landing is, because vertical landing is solving the inverted pendulum problem, and you can balance a broom on the tip of your finger pretty easily, but try doing that with a pencil. You can't really do it with a pencil because the moment of inertia is just too low. So as the moment of inertia of the vehicle gets bigger, it actually becomes easier to land the vehicle. So it scales beautifully. And to do the things that we want to do in space, if you want to do the things you see on the Expanse, we're going to need some big reusable boosters. And they can't just be small boosters. So anyway, that's a very long answer to a very important question, which is, why are we doing this the way we're doing it? What's the strategy? And we've now flown the New Shepard booster, the first one that we flew that booster 5 times before retiring it. It's designed for a 25 mission life, and ultimately it will be above 100 missions as we get more practice.
I've seen those reusable landings in the video there. It's amazing how beautiful it looks.
It looks like CGI.
It looks like CGI. It does. What's fascinating me when you're talking, Jeff, is you sound like you're part of the engineering team.
I am part of the engineering team. I have been studying, rocket propulsion and rocket engines and space vehicles since I was a little kid, so I love it. It's not work for me. It's interesting. We have a team of 1,500 people at Blue Origin. They are professional aerospace engineers and computer scientists and et cetera, et cetera. You know, they are the ones doing the hard work. But I definitely help, and I know enough to help, and I enjoy it.
It's exciting. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because I get a big kick out of this. Here in Texas, you've got a special project that you've got going on in the mountains somewhere, right? I forget what it's called.
The 10,000-year clock.
The 10,000-year clock. And I read about this, and I was fascinated because one of the things that I really find intriguing is that nobody knows why you're building it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that.
Right, and I know why.
You know why.
Yeah. Would you like me to
I
tell
would
you?
love you to tell me why, but I almost don't want to know.
It's like, because it's a mystery.
But it's because people are going to know.
Don't worry, I think it's one of those things you can explain 1,000 times and people still won't understand.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's okay.
It'll remain a mystery.
So the 10,000-year clock is invented by a brilliant guy and a friend of mine named Danny Hillis. He's a genuine genius. He invented it back in the 1980s. And the idea is that you build a clock as a symbol of long-term thinking. The clock sort of ticks once a year, and chimes once a decade, and the cuckoo comes out once a millennium, that kind of thing. And so it's a monumental scale. It's 500 feet tall. It's buried in a mountain in West Texas. It's nearing completion. It's probably just 2 or 3 years away from being completed. We've been working on it for more than 10 years. Which is not a long time for a 10,000-year clock. It's completely mechanical. It's designed to operate itself and keep time for 10,000 years with no human intervention if need be. It's powered by day-night thermal cycles. It's very complicated. It has a solar synchronizer that sees the sun at solar noon and resynchronizes, because you can't really keep time for 10,000 years without doing something like that. Because the Earth precesses, you need a cam to adjust for the position of the sun at solar noon. It's a very complex mechanical device, but it's also a beautiful object. So why? Why would you build this crazy thing, put it in a remote mountain in West Texas? The answer is that we humans have now become so powerful on this planet that we need to be better at thinking long term. If you go back 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years, but even just 100 years, we humans couldn't really, we were small compared to the planet. There was only so much that we could do to this planet. And by the way, I talk about this all the time. This is such an important and obvious observation. We have sent robotic probes to all of the planets in this solar system. Believe me, this is the best one. It is not close. My friends who want to move to Mars, I say, do me a favor, move to Mount Everest first for a year on the top. See how you like it, because that's a garden paradise compared to Mars. And so we will move into the solar system. I don't think that we will do it on planetary surfaces primarily. I think I'm more in the Gerard O'Neill frame of mind, that we will build giant million-person space colonies closer to Earth, because we want to come back to Earth. We want to be near Earth because this is such a great place. We want to preserve this planet. The primary reason, ultimately, that you go to space is so that you can continue to grow our civilization. I want 1 trillion humans in the solar system. We have 1,000 Einsteins and 1,000 Mozarts. And I want people using more energy per capita than we use today, even as we get more efficient, because that will make us incredibly dynamic. And if you have all that, Earth has to end up, Earth can't support that. Earth, not even close. Earth is going to become basically it's going to end up being its own residential and light industry. And people are going to mostly live in space, but they're going to want to visit Earth. And when they want to visit Earth, it can't be a 2 or 3 year trip. It needs to be a few days. And so people are going to want to live in Earth vicinity, in Earth trailing orbits and other kinds of orbits that are close enough to Earth that you can get here quickly. And that's going to lead you to things like O'Neill planets and O'Neill colonies. By the way, if you haven't seen it, I urge you to search on the web for a video that was recently resurfaced. It's an old video. It's Jerry O'Neill and Isaac Asimov being interviewed about O'Neill colonies. And Asimov gets asked a question, which is, why in science fiction did nobody come up with the idea of people living in giant space colonies in science fiction, it's always been people living on other planetary surfaces. And Asimov says, oh, that's obvious. We grew up on a planet. We're planetary chauvinists. And I think that's exactly right. It's not the right solution, it's just the one that's most obvious to us because it's how we grew up, it's how we evolved. So that's, I don't even know what your question was anymore, but...
I think you answered about 6 minutes. But you're talking about having long-term vision and the clock kind of representing long-term vision because we're disposable.
If you think about that clock, so we as a species, we kind of honor old things. So my prediction is the clock will accomplish absolutely nothing for about 300 years. And then 300 years from now, people will say, wow, somebody built this thing 300 years ago and it's still ticking. And it's kind of cool that they did that and put it in this remote mountain. And then they'll start to think about it and it'll become a place that people take pilgrimages to and they think about it as a symbol for long-term thinking. And we absolutely need our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids to think long-term. At the scale we operate at and with the power that we have as a species, we can build really dangerous things. We can do horrible things to ourselves and to our future children and grandchildren and so on. And so we do need to think long-term.
And that leads into the next question. A lot of people are asking, there's so much to be done here on Earth. And with all of the resources at your disposal, why would you choose to...
Why fund space instead of... The people in this room probably are predisposed to understand this, and I hope you continue to do the good work of educating people about why it's so important. But it is a very common question when you're asking, you do get it all the time, which is, the resources. I'm spending about $1 billion a year on Blue Origin, which I can do because of Amazon. And my girlfriend from high school, by the way, will tell you that I started Amazon explicitly to raise the money to fund Blue Origin. She is right. And but this is you will always get the question, why not spend the money on something else? And of course, we should also spend money on other things too. We should spend money on homelessness. We should spend money on early education. There are many, many important issues, poverty eradication and so on, disease, medicine. There are many problems here, right now, and those things should be addressed. But it doesn't mean that you should only do those things. You also need to work on the things that are only going to pay dividends 50 years from now, 100 years from now, in some cases even 200 years from now. You've got to get it started. And I know how to start this kind of thing, and what it takes is, I have watched the most dynamic environment over the last 20 years on the internet. And on the internet, what we've seen over the last 2 decades is nothing short of remarkable. So 2 kids in their dorm room created this thing called Facebook, which is now a $500 billion market cap company in less than 2 decades. How does that happen? How do you get that kind of dynamism in such a short period of time from 2 kids with no capital to speak of? Amazon started with $1 million of capital, is now approaching $1 trillion in market cap in 24 years. How did that happen? Well, it's because we didn't have to build, none of these companies had to build deep, expensive, capital-intensive infrastructure. Amazon rested on the shoulders of the existing transportation system, the U.S. Postal Service, the Royal Mail, Deutsche Post, UPS, FedEx. We didn't have to build a transportation network. We didn't have to put a computer in everybody's house. That was already there, for gaming, by the way, primarily. We didn't have to build a big network. It was already there. It was built for the long-distance phone network, but it was repurposed for the early innings of the internet. And so on and so on. All that infrastructure was in place. And when heavy lifting infrastructure is in place, then smart entrepreneurs with very little capital can reassemble the pieces in new ways and do amazing things in short periods of time. And that's how you get Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And today, it is impossible, I submit to you that it is impossible today to be the Mark Zuckerberg of space. And the reason is that the heavy lifting, the price of admission to do big things in space is just too high. And so I see it as Blue Origin's job. I want to reduce that price of admission. And once I know that if we can reduce the price of admission to space, to do big things in space, make that much less expensive by making the vehicles reusable and so on, all the things we've been talking about, then you will get the Mark Zuckerberg space. Then you will see a multi-decade period of incredible entrepreneurial dynamism in space, which you can't quite do today. It's still too early. So we've got to do that heavy lifting piece. And the heavy lifting piece is expensive. It just is. It's got to be. It's heavy lifting. It's like building a transportation network. It's not going to be cheap. But that, we have, Amazon provides the resources to do that.
You're creating the highway. You're creating
we're building a road so your kids can build a future.
It reminds me kind of, it's an incredible vision. It reminds me almost when you were bringing up we can't just work on what's happening now to the future. It's almost like if we approached our medical system that way, and we only treated the diseases that were burgeoning and we have to prevent. You have to work on.
You have to do R&D.
You have to eat well. You have to stay in shape. You have to research and develop.
All the research and development that people do on medicine is oftentimes doesn't pay.
You can't just treat
for decades and decades and decades. You can't just work on today. You do need to work on today. I would never claim that you don't need to work on today. You do, but you can't just work on today.
Yeah. So here's more of a wish list question. If out of all the places in the solar system, if you could build a colony, where would you be most excited to start?
There's no question about it's the moon. You need to build a permanent settlement. It's time to go back to the moon, this time to stay. And the moon is an incredibly interesting place. It's going to turn out, if you believe in some divine intervention, the universe doing interesting things for us, it's a gift to have the moon so close to us. Most planets don't have a moon like this that close. That moon is going to turn out to be our gateway to the rest of the solar system because it has water, which we know now. We didn't know that 20 years ago, not with certainty. We know it today with certainty. It has a bunch of interesting materials. It has bulk mass that's going to be good for radiation shielding and other things. And it's in a very low gravity well, so that you can get things off the moon much more easily than you can get things off the Earth. This is the first step, and people who want to skip that step are fooling themselves. The special ops guys have a saying, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You don't skip steps. It doesn't work. You just get parlor tricks when you skip steps. And then, if we go to Mars today, we'll get boots on the ground and we'll do the same thing we did on the moon in 1969, and we won't go back to Mars again for a long time. It's not sustainable.
You have a slogan, don't you?
Predatum ferociter. Is that the one you're thinking of?
Predatum ferociter.
Predatum ferociter means step by step ferociously.
And I read that you have on your missiles, your rockets.
By the way,
sorry, I've been doing
the State Department does classify them as missiles, and we do get a call from NORAD every time we launch, which actually comforts me. They see our launches.
At least they're watching. But you apparently you paint a tortoise on your rockets every time. If the vehicle's been used 5 times, the booster's been used 5 times, it has 5 tortoises on it. It's our marker and again, it all goes back to that step by step ferociously. And the ferociously part is important too. Step by step is good. Don't skip steps, but do all the steps fast. And the tortoise is, I really believe that's the way in the long term, that's the way you make the fastest progress. Slow and steady is the race. Yeah. Now, I heard a rumor, and this is just for people like me who are not yet in science, but love it, that you were a huge Star Trek fan.
That is true. I am a huge Star Trek fan. Since a kid, in 4th grade, my friends Dean and Kyle, who lived down the street, we played Star Trek all day long. This is in Houston, Texas, where I grew up. We had tricorders and phasers, and we argued over who would get to be Captain Kirk and Spock. They were usually the 2 favorites. Other people would be.
So I was so right when I said.
Some people like to be the computer.
Wait, I looked at you and I said, that guy, I think he's a nerd. I was.
By the way, speaking of what we were talking about earlier, that the dreamers come first. Alexa, Echo, Amazon Echo, and Alexa are absolutely inspired by and patterned after the Star Trek computer.
Look at that. Look at that. So I guess Amazon's going to be making plexiglass 3D kind of comms soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to do that. What I really want, what's harder to do, is the Star Trek replicator.
Oh yeah.
The transporter wouldn't be bad
either. This 3D printing is
kind of speaking of it, faster than light speed travel would be fine with me too.
Yeah. Okay. If your vision is to go out into space, and then this kind of relates back to your my initial question about why are you working on outer space instead of working at home? And I was trying to think about the answer myself. And I was thinking, yeah, why is he spending all his resources there? Does he want to just get off the planet? And then I'm thinking about the name of your company, Blue Origin. So if your vision is to go out into space, why is the name of your company Blue Origin? Are you trying to get us off the planet? Or are you trying to create something to make us better?
I want us to preserve this planet because it's a gem and it's unique, and there's nothing like it in our solar system. And there might be planets interesting, but there may be planets as interesting as this one in other solar systems, but we're not going to get there, not in the foreseeable future. And so we really need to take care of this planet. And I hate the idea of stasis. That's the other alternative. The other way to take care of Earth is to control population and to control energy usage per capita. And I really don't like that future. I don't. I think it's going to be a boring future. I think it's, I don't even think it's consistent with liberty. You're telling people how much energy they can use, you're telling people how many kids they can have. Why would you want that future when you can move out into the solar system? But there's a timing thing here. We don't have forever to get out into the solar system. We will get in a place where we can't do it. The Earth already is, if you take current baseline energy usage globally, compound it at just a few percent a year for just a few hundred years, you have to cover the entire surface of the Earth in solar cells. That's just not going to happen. So you know that's the proof that we will have to enter some kind of stasis if we're not willing to or organized enough to move out into the solar system. This isn't something that would be nice to do, in my opinion. This is something we have to do. It's critically important. That's why I believe that what I'm doing at Blue Origin is my most important work. I really do believe that.
I have kind of a two-part question here. This is kind of from my heart. It was mentioned a little bit by Rick at the beginning. I mean, there's so much technological stuff that has to be accomplished. There's so many challenges that it's all technical, it's all science, it's all just laying the groundwork and the foundation. Have you had the time or the inspiration to think about the human factor? Have you put any thought into that, or is it too early in your opinion?
It's a little early for some of the more advanced things. I mean, yes, we think a lot about the human factors on like these short suborbital space tourism missions that we're putting together for New Shepard. That's relatively simple. Where you get into really complex human factor things is when you're talking about hard space radiation and things like that. When you leave, kind of low Earth orbit, things get much more complicated in that regard. And to shield people from radiation is very mass intensive. The most straightforward way, anyway, is to just use a lot of mass. But getting mass in space is expensive, so that's really the best way. I actually suspect that with all the progress that we're making with medicine and biotech, that we may figure out how to harden humans to radiation before we figure out how to make space vehicles really hardened to radiation. So there's nothing fundamentally problematic. We're getting the progress being made in treating cancer and in some cases even curing cancer is so dramatic that we may in fact be able to remediate some of the problems from space radiation in very practical ways in the next 30, 40, 50 years.
The second part of the question would be, the people, like in the show, in The Expanse, my character is a fusion of three cultures, because the creators of the show felt, who's going to populate Mars? Who are those people that are going to end up on that planet? Because they don't get to choose. Like, the people that end up going to Mars, the people that end up colonizing the system, they don't get to choose. They get picked. There's going to be a screening process. There's going to be a selection team. There's going to be skill sets that are prioritized. And it's not necessarily going to be the same skill sets that human beings have evolved into now, which were, muscles and brawn and a lot of different kinds of skill sets that allow survival. It's going to be a whole different set of skill sets that get us into the next stage of our evolution. Do you think that's going to change our species that goes out and colonizes the system?
It's a very interesting question. Of course, nobody really knows. The question you're asking is so difficult and hard to predict, but my guess is that it becomes cheaper to live in space than it is to live on Earth. Because Earth is so finite, Earth is going to end up being like a really great place to live if you can afford it. And it's going to be way more attractive for most people to go live in a giant O'Neill-style colony. And this will happen very slowly over hundreds of years, so it's not something that will happen dramatically or quickly. Because those colonies, you'll be able to use much more energy. The energy will be rationed on Earth. You'll have to use very little bits of energy, so there'll be some problems living on Earth. It'll be expensive, there'll be a lot of constraints, a lot of zoning, a lot of regulations. And in space, you'll be able to have much more freedom, much more liberty. You'll be able to use much more energy because you can intercept the energy. It's 24/7 sunlight coming at you. And so that is, I think, people are going to choose to live in space. They're going to want to live there because in many ways their lifestyle is going to be better. People don't, if you haven't read The High Frontier or watched videos about the O'Neill colony kind of idea, they have rivers and forests and mountains, and these are big, interesting, fun places to live, not what you would picture if you picture the International Space Station.
I was hoping you were going to say that geeks will inherit the Earth. That's what I was hoping for. But that
would be terser and funnier.
But that was a great answer. Now we're almost at the end now, and I just wanted to when I told the team at Production Expanse I was coming in to interview you, they got really excited because they never had a chance to thank you. And as we come wrapping up this thing, they put something really quickly together for me to give to you. So I'm going to give that to you right now. So it's a theme of hats today. This is, for those of you who know, this is the original Thomas Jane Detective Miller fedora, which you can actually take and put it on. Nice little stand here that says The Expanse, Amazon Prime Video. And right here, this shiny little object. I don't know if you remember in episode 1, James Holden is asked to be the XO of the Canterbury, the new commander of the Canterbury, and he begrudgingly takes this XO badge, and they have put this badge on here as a symbol of our new XO.
That's awesome.
And so this is a token of our gratitude, and from everyone at the Expanse, and from everyone here, I want to say thank you, Haas. We're gonna take a selfie with all of you guys in the background.